Who let Grandpa out the house? Who let Grandpa out the house? Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Jamal Thomas Show. I know I keep saying morning show because typically I am in the morning. If you guys dig the content, definitely give it a like, give it a share. You can support the content through PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats. Any Super Chats will be read, providing it's not racist, bigoted, sexist, etc. And again, typically I'm in the morning, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., so definitely check me out. I will be right here at this station, at the helm of the show, doing the Jamal Thomas Morning Show at 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. So definitely check me out. If you're up, on the way to work, working out, cleaning the house, whatever you're doing, check me out. I am doing my damnedest to grow this channel. I want to be able to get damn good interviews and everything else, and I require your help to do that. So, if you do nothing else, providing you enjoy it, definitely at least give it a like. Like I said, if you're super enjoying it, you can always support in other ways. This video is pretty astonishing to me. It was reported that Kamala Harris was giving Joe Biden what they call the stiff arm, the stinky leg, the get away from me, Grandpa. And the reasoning that Kamala Harris is given is effectively that Joe Biden is the past, she's the future, and there's this belief that he is an albatross around her neck. Wow, how times have changed. If you remember, if you think back just before Kamala Harris got into the race, Kamala Harris was the bad penny. It was, what do we do with Kamala Harris? Because they assumed that they needed to give it to somebody else if Joe Biden couldn't necessarily carry the burden, and that Kamala Harris in no way was capable, suitable, or, let's say, fit to run in the race, considering what happened in the last time she was in the primary. So, the thought was, what can we do with Harris? How can we get Newsom? How can we get somebody else whose name is not Kamala Harris? Well, that was unfeasible. And because that wasn't necessarily the most feasible thing in the world to pull off, meaning how do you ignore your VP in trying to put somebody else in that spot? So they didn't ignore the VP, they put the VP into the spot, and now the VP is turning around looking at the president saying that the president is problematic for her. That is pretty astonishing considering she can't necessarily distinguish herself in any way from that same president that she considered to be a liability. Fair enough. Fair enough. In this article, they talk about how Joe Biden is available. He wants to help out on the campaign trail. And they keep saying stuff like, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. Basically, we don't want him on the campaign trail. They even talk about how at one point Joe Biden popped up and said, I'm going to Pittsburgh. And people were looking around like, did he tell you he was going to Pittsburgh? He going to Pittsburgh for you? They were surprised by it. Now, if you talk to the campaign, they would say, no, 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 no. All of this is overblown. We've been in association with Joe Biden. Maybe, maybe not. On the other part to this, as I pointed out once before, campaigns get far more shrill the moment that they acknowledge that they are behind and that they are doing any and everything in their power to claw, bite, scrape, kick, spit, and any and everything else below that to try to somehow gain advantage going into the final week, especially when they know they are behind, as is this campaign. So Tim Walz comes out, Trump is Hitler, and his supporters are Nazis. Hillary Clinton, his supporters are Nazis. Kamala Harris, Trump's a fascist, and even doubles down on it. I mean, don't take my word for it. Right here. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Do you think Donald Trump's a fascist? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I think he's a fascist. I have a week to go. Got to call him something. Everything else I've been doing hasn't been working. Got to call him something. He's fascist. He's fascist. Now, whether that's true or not is secondary to the point, as I pointed out in my last video, that Donald Trump is a fixed quantity. The man has been around for the last 10 years. The man has been president. How are you going to somehow define him as something different than what the American public has seen for the past 10 years? In fact, Trump has a better chance of shaping you than you ever have of shaping him. Your best bet would have been to, this is what I want. This is my vision for the country. I want to articulate that vision for the country every time I open my mouth. Now, she would make the argument that, well, I could do two things at once. I could talk about the economy and I could talk about Donald Trump. But it's not working that way in practice. In practice, what people hear is that every time you open your mouth, you say something about Trump. If somebody asks you a difficult question, you go meandering into the wilderness somewhere, eventually getting around to talking about Trump. If somebody asks you something directly, again, eventually it always goes back to Trump. It always goes back to Trump. That becomes somewhat of a problem when people don't quite know who you are, or for that matter, what you want. Fine. Joe Biden takes it upon himself. If she's not going to invite me on the campaign trail, then damn it, I'm going to do my part. So Joe Biden, not the most eloquent, not altogether there, often stumbles over his words, rarely can get out a coherent thought in one sentence, goes out stomping for Kamala Harris. Joe Biden gets out and says, you think the headline of this video is me being hyperbolic? No. This is me being very literal and showing what Joe Biden actually said. Right here.
They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters. His demonization of things is unconscionable, and it's un-American.
You heard that right. Just play it one more time. Just nail it down.
Puerto Rico, my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters. His demonization of things is unconscionable.
The only garbage I see out there are his supporters. Now, the reason that this line of thought entered Joe Biden's mind is because at the hate fest that Donald Trump had at the Madison Square Garden. Now, I'm calling it a hate fest because several of the people who were on that stage said some things that is considered to be hateful, racist, etc., etc. Now, you can make an argument on whether the comedian was funny or not. Put that to the side for the bit. I think it's a fair point to say that it conflicted Donald Trump's closing arguments. Because in the same way Kamala Harris is making her closing arguments right now, Trump is also making his closing arguments for the election. The Madison Square Garden was a huge venue. You had thousands of people that was at that venue to hear Donald Trump. And it came across almost like an RNC convention with Donald Trump giving this kind of closing message. Are you better today than you were 4 years ago? Fine. No issue with the message. In fact, the message goes fully in line with this notion of whether people are happy and content with the direction of the country. The reason why I say it gets in the way of that message is because many people are having a conversation about whether or not the rhetoric was hateful and racist. And one of the things that was brought up was this notion that Puerto Rico was trash or garbage. Now, Trump didn't say that. One of the people on the stage said that. And let's postulate for the moment that even if Donald Trump himself said that, why are you hitting the supporters? Meaning, Why are you, Joe Biden, coming out saying 31% of the American public are Republicans, are self-identified Republicans? Now, I don't know what percentage of those are Trump supporters, but let's say the majority of those are Trump supporters, and let's add in independents to that mix. So I'm going to go with the 31% number. This is reminiscent of Mitt Romney saying 42% of the country are takers, or Hillary Clinton calling a large number of people deplorables. In this case, Joe Biden has gone on television and said that 31% of the American public of voters are trash. They're garbage. And they're garbage because they're voting and supporting Donald Trump. People have all sorts of reasons for voting for Donald Trump. And yet, according to Joe Biden, all of them are garbage. Here's the catch, though. Most Democrats will not take issue with that statement. They may hee-haw if they get on TV, but between themselves, 3 a.m., between them and their God, or, for that matter, in a room with other liberals, they full well believe what Joe Biden just said there, that his supporters are trash and garbage. And the reason why I know that is because I've spoken to Democrats. I've had the luxury of having the conversations with people on both sides of the political spectrum and having conversations with Democrats personally. They believe that. That is a full-bore belief. In their mind, they do not understand under any circumstances how somebody can vote for Donald Trump. From their point of view, it makes all the sense in the world to vote for Kamala Harris, whatever her failings, whatever her misses or infirmities in regards to a candidate. By definition, obviously, according to them, she's better than Trump. And because it's so obvious, then from their point of view, they don't fundamentally understand it. It is a blind spot to them. And oftentimes, their point of view of Donald Trump as Hitler, as a fascist, as a new Mussolini type figure, it feeds into the supporters themselves. Meaning, if the candidate is considered to be this way, then what are the people who are backing that candidate considered to be? You may think that's a slip of the tongue. I think it's a slip of the tongue only in the sense that he said exactly what he and other Democrats think aloud. And that if this was Joe Biden in the 80s, he would have had enough self-awareness and enough cognitive control to say something else other than that. Have no doubt, though, they actually believe that. They actually believe it. Every bit as much as Mitt Romney believes 42% of the country are just eaters, useless eaters, takers, taken from the good Americans. Yeah, this red and blue America thing that Obama was trying to go with, saying there is no red and blue America, that is not the way liberals think. What Joe Biden is articulating there is a Democratic point of view of 31% of the American public and of American voters. And under no circumstances will Joe Biden, will AOC, will Kamala Harris, will Barack Obama, will Michelle Obama, will Whoopi Goldberg, will Oprah Winfrey, will any of these people have a self-assessment of how on earth is a billionaire stealing the label of being the avatar for the working class? How do you get a billionaire, a blue-collar billionaire that is only thinking about himself in real terms, full of ego, full of hubris? I've often said that if your 3-year-old acted in the way that Donald Trump acted, you will not tolerate it under any circumstances. And yet, he's been able to grab the mantle of, I am fighting for the working man, despite the fact that I have a billionaire, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, giving me $75 million, and I have Miriam Adelson giving me $100 million in order to annex the West Bank, and other millionaires and billionaires putting money in my pocket, and me giving tax cuts to the super rich that is going to balloon the debt. Yes, all of that is true, and yet I am fighting for you. I'm Donald Trump. How do you do that? How does that happen? Meaning, how do you lose the mantle of defender of the working class? Keep in mind, philosophically speaking, Democrats are supposed to be the release valve to the capitalistic system, meaning to the worst aspects of the capitalistic system It is supposed to be the left side of the political spectrum that is supposed to say, okay, we need to do something to maintain the integrity and the cohesion of the state by alleviating some of the worst aspects of the capitalistic system. Bills are too high. We need more housing. People need to have health care. People, older people, if you've worked for your entire life, the last thing you should struggle in your final years to put food on the table, or for that matter, have a roof over your head. That is supposed to be the purpose of the Democratic Party. And not just the purpose of the Democratic Party. The person who's running for the Democratic Party is supposed to be able to assume that mantle almost in a natural, I don't know, what's the word for it? Almost in an esoteric sense. And yet, going from the 80s to the 90s to the Clinton era, somewhere along the way, that was lost. And not just lost. You get a J.D. Vance and a Donald Trump that is able to assume the position. You're typically only able to assume a position when someone leaves the position. So if you're in Britain, for example, during Brexit, Boris Johnson can run out and say, I believe in freedom and democracy. I want a fortress Britain, and I want us throwing our bodies out to the rest of the world. We believe in freedom. We believe in the referendum. He was able to take that position because he was arguing that Brexit is an allegory for freedom and that he is willing to accept the results of the referendum that effectively said, we want to leave. Labour Party couldn't take that mantle despite the fact that Jeremy Corbyn was a Brexiteer before Brexiteer was a thing, because the Labour Party fundamentally didn't want to leave. So one group can say, we believe in freedom, and the other group couldn't say that because they didn't necessarily believe in that. Meaning, one had to abandon a position that the other one was able to absorb. I'm making a point of saying that the only reason Trump, Vance, the Republican Party in general, weirdly enough, despite the fact that they are representative of the 1%, the only reason they can take that spot is because somewhere along the way, Democrats have lost the thread. Now, Democrats, liberals, have gotten so accustomed to voting for anything, blue no matter who, that this notion of a standard by which they evaluate the candidate who is running, and for them to be able to say, look, you have gone too far below the standard of what would be an acceptable Democrat. Well, they can't do that because from their point of view is blue no matter who. And being incrementally better from their point of view is by definition being better. 3 is less than 4, despite the fact there's only one difference between the two. Whereas a large part of the American public looks at it and say, look, that difference is so negligible that I can't get out of bed to do that. I have 2 jobs. I have a kid to feed. I have 2 or 3 kids to feed. I have responsibilities. I have an adult that I need to take care of. That is not adequate enough for me to get out of bed, for me to vote for you. It becomes that. Now, until they acknowledge, have some level of introspection, have some level of an autopsy in order to figure out where do we go wrong? How do we lose the thread to this guy? Then nothing changes. You can attack voters all you want. Truth be told, 50% of the American public don't vote? And so you have 50% of the public that you can actually reach out to, that you can get your hands on, that for whatever reason have been completely abandoned and ignored in our political space. And instead, they go wagging their finger at Jill Stein. They go telling blacks they're insufficiently loyal. They go making excuses saying, well, those people are just misinformed. Those people are just racist, hateful, and bigoted. And that we need to somehow control social media. And we need to control and stop Elon Musk because Elon Musk has opened up Twitter for all sorts of people in order to influence people to not vote Democrat. Say what you want about Joe Biden in that statement. From his point of view, and from liberals' point of view, it is an articulation of reality. That is what they actually believe. 3 a.m. between him and his God. that the majority, or 31% of the American public, are trash. The only garbage I see out there are his supporters. You can take issue with what was taking place in Madison Square Garden. Fair enough. You can take issue with what was said about Hispanics. Fair enough. Even if Trump himself said it, I can understand you having great qualms about it. Again, fair enough. To ascribe that to the American voter, however, is beyond the pale. And every bit as much as Romney was getting criticism for 42% of the country are takers, Joe Biden deserves every bit as much criticism for basically effectively saying, in real terms, not effectively saying the quiet part out loud, that 31% of the American public are trash. Just amazing. Just amazing. Bad insult comedian. Yeah. And by the way, that comedian is equal opportunity. Like, he hits everybody. Blacks, Jews, whites, etc. So it's not just Hispanics. He is equal opportunity across the board. So there's that. All right. I will end it here. I'm going to say Giuliani was trash in that speech. It just way beyond the pale. I mean, utterly and entirely unhinged and deranged, to put it mildly. In the Madison Square Garden speech. I don't know if you guys heard the Giuliani part of that speech. But look, either way you look at it, though, it's one thing to ascribe something to a candidate. It's another thing to ascribe it to the American public as a whole. These are people who ultimately you are trying to convince to vote for you. And keep in mind the pitch that Democrats have been making, running around with Liz Cheney, running around with Dick Cheney. I hate to tell Democrats, Liz Cheney voted with Donald Trump 84% of the time. Are they trying to tell me that the 16% makes the difference between whether they're trash or whether they're statesmen? I mean, come on. All right, I'm going to take a break. Long defiant. Grats, JT, on your recent work. Wishing you future success. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Look, I am trying to grow this channel, so definitely give it a like if you enjoy it. Share it if you enjoy it. If you definitely enjoy it, consider giving a super chat. All chats are going to be read. Definitely catch me 3 a.m. I'm sorry, not 3 a.m. Lord knows, not 3 a.m. 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, including this morning. Will Malik ever come on? Malik will be on tomorrow. Malik will be on tomorrow. In fact, he will be on tomorrow at 7:15 a.m. So definitely check us out. We're going to have the band back together. The band will be back together. All right. I am going to say like. I'm going to say share. And I am going to say subscribe. Guys, thank you. Sleep tight.